Hey, we are live. We're doing something a little bit different tonight. We thought we would go live. So, welcome to the New Royals. I am Sean.
I'm Paul. This is exciting.
I'm sorry.
I'm watching. I'm making sure we're coming up because this is our first time doing it from Melnap. We've gone live on Facebook before
all day.
But this is our first time through an intermediary.
Yes.
I'm excited to see if I still haven't gotten the notification that we've shown up.
Okay.
But that's because there's a delay on Facebook.
It's going to come.
I know this is exciting, guys, but technical stuff. This is what happens when you go live. All kinds of things can happen.
Well, I think we're good. I don't know.
Oh, there it is. We are live. I see us on our phone.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's official. It's official. We've done it.
I love it. This is exciting.
Oh, yes. Okay. There we go. Well, welcome to the first live episode. So go ahead, like this, share this, subscribe to this, all the good stuff. I don't have I mean, this is good times here. So
well, after this is done, so you can be a part of it right now, which is exciting, and we'll engage with you if you want to chat in that little. Just type it in, and we will get back to you if you have a question, comment. We'd love that. But afterwards, after this is recorded, you can subscribe to us on YouTube or find us anywhere you want your audio podcast. Just look for the New Royals podcast and you'll find us. Subscribe and go to auto download, and we'll be right there with you every week.
It's true. He's not wrong. It's a great place to find it.
I'm not wrong.
So yeah, go ahead, like, share this, and then we are going to go ahead. I'm going to show the chat right now. So if there's anything that you guys want to say, we'll go ahead there. We're going to do some questions because we know a lot of you guys, have some really good input and thoughts. And so there we go. Oh, I can hear us in the background there. So this is our first time.
I'm turning that down. I'm sharing us around, like spreading the love here.
It around. Okay. So, hey, we're really, really excited to be on tonight. And we thought, well, what the heck, we'll go live and then we'll kind of clean this up and
see what happens.
Post it in the morning. So this is the podcast. So really excited. I don't know if you were, if you weren't here last week, we had arguably what I would say is my favorite one we've had as of yet. I really
think
enjoyed
it was actually
last
really
week.
Good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. So
I thought it was important.
It was.
Lots of people going through it right now.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really, really good. And so I and we just got honest. We got really, really honest and
low raw.
Yeah. And so, so I think tonight I was just like, well, what are we going to do? And the best thing we should do is just pick up right where we left off and just rock it. So that is what we're going to do tonight. We're just going to pick up where we left off. And so what we were doing was talking about transition and what transition feels like and what, going through. Hopefully tonight you're going to be encouraged by just knowing that there are other people on the planet going through the exact same thing and processing the exact same thing that you are. And so we're all in this together. So that's just what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about it. And so, like I said, if you've got questions, thoughts, comments, or concerns, we are definitely going to try to ask those.
Let us know.
Go ahead and ask those. And if nothing else, if we don't have the answer, we'll at least acknowledge that you asked. God bless.
And I'm continuing to look at the live feed here because for some reason it's not showing my chat on here. So if you guys see me looking at my phone, that's just trying to make sure that I'm not missing anything in the chat.
He's chatting.
Because I don't want to miss anything with you guys.
I have the chat covered right here on my screen. So I've got it covered.
Okay, so it's working for you. Well, that's
awesome. You don't even need to monitor it. It's good. I've got it. So
okay,
there we go.
Good.
Live TV.
Even better. Excellent.
So, all right. So anyway, so last week we talked just about, the development. For me, it was like a lot of, we talked about David and Saul's armor and Peter and the waves. Mm-hmm. Part of sometimes what adversity builds in us we kind of had a little bit of a moment where we were talking about how, adversity is a great thing, but adversity is not one of those things that's designed where God, wakes you up in the morning and there's just nothing but there's just a gauntlet in front of you from the bedroom to the bathroom. And it's like, oh man, I hope he makes it. And if he does, he's really going to learn a lot because that's what this is about. It's just a giant educational gauntlet. That's not what it's about. God is a redeemer. I actually heard somebody today just talking about, just kind of expounding on, he who has begun a good work in you is faithful to complete it. And I was like,
Yeah, so good.
okay, where's this going? And his perspective was actually one. It was interesting, because he was talking about just the beauty in the heart of the Father, that his desire to complete the work that is in you is because he knows how beautiful you are. He knows what a purpose he's created you for. And he was really just dropping some encouragement to hold on to, that, part of the process of life is just it goes, and the Father is in full support of it because he knows what it is that he's created you to be. And I almost understand sometimes, I and it could be just part of my journey. I struggle with that statement sometimes, what he's created you to be, because that almost kind of locks the identity portion into, let me say it, your job title, right? What you're created to be.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I love, very true.
That's not what it is. It couldn't be farther from the truth.
No,
It has nothing to do with that.
So much more than that.
Yeah, it's so much. Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, my daughter is my daughter. What my daughter does is a facet of her life and a facet of her relationship, but it is not who she is. And even her purpose, even if she had the most amazing, most noble purpose in the whole wide world, again, it's not who she is, it's what she does. And my love for her is not based on what those things that she does are, although I am a part and do love the things she does. And I love the things that she loves. I mean, I am, I'm a huge, I coach my daughter's soccer team, and I love doing that with her, but I don't love her because she plays soccer. I love that she plays soccer. Does that make sense?
Because,
right? So
it's like, I only love you because you're a soccer player.
Right.
And that's who you are.
Right.
Kind of thing. Yeah. That's not,
if you didn't play soccer, it would be a little less interesting, and, it would be maybe, it would be a little less eventful, because, there's nothing like practicing in the Northwest rain here. So, but anyway, so we kind of touched on that a little bit, kind of went down that road, and we're excited to go down that road with you tonight as well. So
good.
So feel free to, we're kind of messing around tonight, doing a little bit of a live feed. And so we're definitely going to do that. But like I said, feel free to chime in, and we'll take it away. But Paulie, you kind of were, you were talking the transition talk, last week, kind of taking us there, and we really didn't get there. We kind of got distracted, and hopefully we'll get distracted again tonight. But give it a run. What exactly, because we both were kind of expounding on how we both been feeling transition in certain ways. And
transition is fresh to me right now because I'm in the midst of transition. I mean, right here, this podcast, this Facebook page, all that we're building here, this is part of the transition. And I'm trying to think of, like, I've been through transition many times in my life. In fact, I think I was just listening to Sean Bowles thing where he was basically saying that if you're not going through change, are you sure you're walking with God, kind of thing. And it's very true. I mean, transition is a regular recurring thing. And it seems that every couple years, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's 8, sometimes it's 1, but there's always another season of it. And I am thick in the middle of one of the I'd say most challenging seasons of transition I've ever been in right now, because I've completely stepped out of the old way of how I used to do things, how I used to make money, go about work, even how I've parented at home. Now that I'm home all the time, working at home, many things have changed in my life, and the core of who I am has remained, but I'd say it's gotten better, which is the great part of transition. But being in it right now, there's this frustration. I was telling Summer about this today, and as my wife and I were processing. In the past, a lot of my transition seasons, I was learning to trust God to meet my needs, because I think even though God promises that in the Bible, most of us still have to learn it. And it's like he allows us to go through seasons where that's challenged, and then he proves it to us. That's been proven to me. And I was telling her today, I'm not worried that we'll lose our house. I'm not worried that we'll go hungry. I'm not worried about any of that if all this kind of falls apart. For me, it's not a worry. It's more of a I know what I'm seeing, and I know that he's got something really good for me. But right now, it feels like the old is still. I thought we were completely out of the old, and it feels like there's still stuff that hasn't fully ebbed away yet. And in the meantime, the new is like right at the beginning, and so I don't fully understand it. I don't fully know what to do with it yet. I'm not seeing the fruit yet, at least on a provisional basis that I'm hoping for. And so this middle place is frustrating because it's like you do all that you know how to do, and the temptation is to step out of who you are and be something you're not, because it feels like what you're doing isn't working, right? Or the other option is that you feel tempted to let go of what all those hours of prayer, meditation, plans you've made with your wife and loved ones, all the stuff that you guys affirmed with each other that God confirmed. Like, I'm a big confirmation guy. Like, when I have a big thing, I'm like, okay, God, please, like, confirm this somehow. And God speaks to me in different ways. It could be obvious sign, it could be a verse in the Bible, whatever. But it's like I know when He's speaking to me. I take all that, I compile it, and I have this whole book of testimonies in my journal and my journey. And yet, when you're in this and it doesn't seem to be working, the temptation is, did I hear God?
Yeah.
Am I a psychopath? Like, do I just hear voices? Do I know the Bible well? And all this stuff that, like, 6 months ago or a year ago, I was walking in confidence in, because I was kind of seeing the fruit of the past season. I kind of mastered that season. All that stuff is now being challenged again, but it's in a new way. That's what transition's like for me right now.
How do you like? What is your process for, like, prophetic promise? That's one of the things I find.
So good.
My wife and I are driving down the road and kind of talking about transition, talking about,
sure.
And one of the things that we used to do when we made big moves is we would put things, especially early on in our marriage. I mean, actually, it hasn't stopped. I mean, our whole life has kind of been these big moments where we had to be confident we had heard from the Lord, and then once we heard, we treated it like the Moses crossed the desert. We weren't going to look back because we weren't going to turn into a pillar of salt, right? That's just, once we made the decision that we had heard the Lord, it was like, once we know, Papa, we've heard you, we were good, and we would move. And I want to bring it back to my question I asked you, but I mean, that's how we would do things, because once we knew we had heard, and it was finally, it just felt like the Father gave us that grace to say that He would just speak clearly. He would just confirm, like when he, I think your echo is on again. I can hear an echo.
I didn't change anything, but let me see.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Did it go away?
Live video. Nope. I can hear.
How about now?
Yep. How about now?
I turned it off and back on.
There we go. There we go. Live TV, everybody. We're doing this tonight. When we would pray for things, like, literally, we prayed for a washer and dryer, and it was the perfect. We had a very tiny house. A standard washer and dryer was going to be very complicated to fit in there, but I only could think about standard washer and dryer. It was going to fit in the bathroom, okay? And how we were going to put them next to each other, and that meant we were going to have this much space between the toilet and the bathroom. But it was our first home. We were poor, and it was like, okay, let's go. We prayed for a washer and dryer, and the next day, this lady at church turns around. She's like, "Do you guys need anything?" Like, that's how she said it. And we just said, well, actually, we're praying for a washer and dryer right now, because we actually don't have a washer and dryer in our house. We don't have any money to buy it. She's like, you know what? I may just have something. She had a stackable washer and dryer that was only yay wide. It literally fit perfectly into the slot. It was like,
wow, I love that.
And I was like, how in the world? And so those kind of things happened, like when we went to Bethel, which I will share my Bethel testimony sometime. But the Lord spoke it, and everything fell into place. And I said, I'm going to do it
Yeah.
this way. And everything just fell into place. And the beautiful
Yeah.
thing is that meant that we had a promise and God,
Mm-hmm.
or a passion and a desire, and God would show up.
Yes.
And I just think those things are so huge, but it kind of
Yeah.
flips on its head a little bit when you start to experience some adversity, because
Mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily know what the promise looks like. You've got some prophetic
Yes.
words, you've got some things you'd like to see it be, and yet you're
Yeah.
kind of drifting in the middle of this. God, are you going to do this? And yet he's the very
Mm-hmm.
same God. So then you feel
Yep.
goofy for questioning, but you still do. Maybe no one else ever does that, but but so
Yeah.
I was saying I actually want to share a little bit about that, but I don't want to do it right now. Actually, how has prophetic promise been a part of this
Man.
this process for you? Because I know you've been, especially even lately, you've been getting some bangers for words.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. I mean, oh, man, where do I even start with that? That is a huge question. The short answer is it's always in like I'm always juxtaposing it. Like I'm learning how to balance it all the time because it depends on the day you catch me on. But Summer and I, we used to do this thing, and we still do it. We just haven't been as vocal about it, but it's still how we live our lives. And it'd be like, do you when faced with two decisions, we'd literally ask ourselves, which one takes more faith? And that's the one we choose. And I have so many testimonies. Summer and I, we could
Wow.
sit down and write down hundreds of testimonies. But I'll tell you what, the more blessed we've become as we've gone, the harder it is to keep answering, or the harder it is to keep making that choice. Because you can have a really good day and it's easy to make that choice, but when it's hard and you actually, like, now we have more to lose, which, look, it's stuff, but I have 6 kids too, and it's like, so I'm weighing like what they'd be giving up if stuff didn't work out, all this, like the world, it gets bigger, like the weight of the world in a way gets bigger.
Right.
It's the blessings, they can weigh heavy if when you're having a rough day, or you're processing stuff. So it actually it gets a little harder sometimes to answer that question the way we used to, because it used to be like, well, we're already so dirt poor, just like you were talking about. But we have so many. I have to keep going back to the testimonies, and I have to keep going back to the words I've received, because God has fulfilled so many of those words over the years. Now, when I'm in the midst of it, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like, now, I will say one thing I've changed. I used to get mad at God. I used to say, "Oh, you said this," or "This is not what I believe
Right.
about you," and like, I'm
Right.
not seeing it. I used to get mad at him. I no longer do that. That's like settled for me. But the difference is now I wonder about myself, and I start to doubt myself.
Okay.
Did I hear that? Because I never blame him anymore. It's like, I know he's good and going to take care of us. So now when we're struggling, it's like, did I hear correctly? Did I mess up? Now, this is what's funny, though, because I'll hear in the exact same way I heard this big word that I made a decision on.
Right.
I'll hear it in that exact same way, something for somebody else, or we'll have a small situation come up, and I'll just ask the Lord, and I'll hear it, and then Summer will go out and talk to people, and she'll come back and she'll be like, yeah, what God told you, that was exactly right. Like, and I'll be like, yeah, I hear from him. Like, it confirms that I hear from him. Right. And sometimes you just need that little encouragement, especially when you're going through it. And so the long answer, like, to bring it to a conclusion on this answer, what I'm trying to say is that I choose to keep believing even when it's crazy, because I think I'd rather make, Steve Backlund taught us this, right, Sean? You'll recognize it, but I'd rather make bad decisions in faith than good decisions without faith. And I feel like that's God's heart for us too, is that he'd rather us tiptoe the kingdom, and then we got to just be trusting in him that if we do make the mistake, he'll rescue us and get us back on course. And that's living with the light is green and not red.
Right.
And it's, I'm honest, like, people say like, oh, it's not wise, whatever. I'm like, I don't see how it could be wisdom to try to logically explain God all the time, because I used to be that person. I'd rather live on the edge, but man, sometimes it is scary. And I don't know. I mean, all that to say, that's probably not a great answer for what you're asking. But all I can do is
awesome.
I keep going back to my own testimonies is one of the things I would say. Always just keep going back to those. And one more thing that just popped in my head.
Yeah.
Always like get yourself out of the muck and take the 30,000 foot view of your life. So even me, like right now where things feel so hard and all this stuff, if I take the 30,000 foot view, I can see myself now and see myself 3 years ago. And I can see all the things spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but then physically too, financially, the house we live in, everything. It's all better than it was 3 years ago, even though it feels harder right now than it felt back then. So that's another thing. Just get that 30,000 foot view. Oh, I lost you. I lost your voice.
Unmuting.
Oh, there you are.
There we go.
Say again.
We're going to learn all those things. I think that's one of the things that I believe, going back to prophetic words, going back to, what does God say? I mean, that's one of the things that, is probably one of the biggest frustrations sometimes can be that though, we're going through these challenges and circumstances, he doesn't freak out, right? He's not up there wringing his hands while we're kind of down. That's one of the things that I try to do. And it's funny because I think sometimes when we freak out, there is you feel like you're being realistic if you freak out, right? You feel like you are. If you don't freak out, you feel like you're not being real. You're not being. I'm not saying this right. It feels sometimes if you're in a situation where it's getting stressful or it's getting challenging, and all of a sudden you find yourself somewhat at peace, your brain kicks in and goes, something's wrong here. Right? Your brain kicks in and goes, hold it, shouldn't you be freaking out right now? And your creative subconscious starts kicking in, looking for like all of these, like your emotions need to match the circumstance. Instead, peace comes in, and peace does not match the circumstance. It overcomes the circumstance. It is a peace that passes all understanding. And sometimes we feel like we owe a trip to the altar of fear to make our sacrifice, Yeah. And that because if not, we're just not being rational. And sometimes fear is just an element. It's an element of control. I don't want to be caught off guard by something terrible happening. So I'm gonna get to discouragement ahead of time. I'm gonna beat it there. Right. I'm going to my emotions are going to, come out and we're going to win the race to discouragement. So that when the discouragement comes, I'm not surprised. Or when the disappointment comes, I'm not shocked. I'm already there. I've already been freaking out for a week, and it's so funny, how many times I've heard, does that make sense? I don't know if
absolutely.
It makes sense,
that's so good.
We do it
That's so
right
good.
because peace would be this completely. I mean, peace is technically peace is irrational. Yeah. In a sense. Yeah. Peace does not seem, if you get an odd doctor's report, God forbid, and then you're at peace, everyone around you is like, what? But or you're down to your last, $1,000 or whatever, and you're just at peace. Like I have a friend who traveled the world for a year without any money.
Wow.
Like God showed up every single time. Wow. And sometimes it was to the penny. But here's the thing. Some people are like, well, it's 11th hour, man. It was to the penny. But if you're at peace, then that's not even a part of the conversation. It doesn't matter whether it was to the penny or not. Right?
It doesn't matter.
The fact was, it is. The fact was, that it was enough for the moment. So it wasn't, it's not relevant whether it was just enough or a little more than enough or abundantly enough. It doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, if he found himself in abundance, he was giving it away anyway, because that's not the point. I just thought, I mean, literally for an entire year, but even that, he reached a point after a year. I think he was coming out of Japan. Yeah, I think it was Japan. And in Japan, he was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, God showed up every single time, and there was still something about just like after a while seeing God show up and show up and show up and show up. There's, I don't know if it's something ingrained in him, but he was just like, God, really? Like, there's like a heart of gratitude for this amazing miracle, and then there's this other part that's just like, but can I have some money? Can I just not think about, I don't want to think, I don't know. It's so weird, but it's a true story. And I love this guy to death. So, but, yeah, I mean, it's just things where, that was, God rains down manna from heaven, and he's like, don't bother trying to store this, right? It doesn't go well. Yeah. This doesn't save well. That little security blanket that you're looking for, that you want to store this stuff, it's not going to go well, because that's not what I'm trying to do with you right now. What I'm trying to do with you right now is far better. What I'm trying to do with you right now is far more engaging. What I'm trying to do with you right now is far, more intimate in you being connected with me. And so, that was the point he was trying to make. And you trying to stock it up yourself will just lead to spoil. And so it's really, really interesting that God is just okay with that. And God, I hate that sometimes,
Yeah.
Right?
It's hard.
It's just like, and even in the, and it's in some of you who have experienced that frustration with it, it's okay. God's okay with the fact that you're frustrated, but life, he can handle it. He doesn't get his feelings hurt. But he is okay, and so it is, and it's just, it's scary. And part of it is because you just, walking through life, you see some crazy stuff, and especially in this day and age, you've seen some crazy stuff. And so then you kind of start to, what makes me any different? Why, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not to live my life based on what I'm seeing in someone else's circumstances. I'm living my life based on me hearing the heart of the Father for myself, for my family, and what does he say?
Yeah.
And just in going at that.
Yeah.
In peace, right? Yeah. And there's a couple things, like there were some opportunities. There was an opportunity in front of me, and I literally felt like the Lord said, don't do it. And I'm like, what? Like this is an opportunity. We can make some some money here. This would be a great provision. As we've gone through some transition, and this would be great. And he's like, yeah, don't do that. And I literally wrestled with it. And my wife was like, well, I mean, this is a great opportunity. You're going to do that? And I'm like, And it was just weird to tell her, babe, I don't think I'm supposed to do that. And she's like, really? But she was like, okay, whatever. Yeah. You don't feel like you're supposed to do it. But it was really one of those things where, hearing the Lord, staying connected with the Lord, and just trying to be at peace. And also, and actually, this probably brings more frustration than sometimes I realize too, is, going to those prophetic words and listening to those prophetic words, and trying to understand, and remember that, hey, yeah, sometimes these prophetic words are, they're for a time, they're for a moment, and that moment may not be like right now, right? So, but to hold on to a promise that the Lord spoke to you. And so I think that's one of the things about transition is it involves a good amount of trust, and that trust comes through intimacy and connection.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I mean, Just as you were talking, I was thinking of just so many instances in my life that were just ringing true with everything you were saying, and it never ends. And it's funny because I, Bill Johnson says something that really always stuck out to me is that God won't bless you, that he won't give you a blessing that'll kill you. And one thing God is not interested in is us being able to shield ourselves from the process he wants to take us through. And a lot of times, if we had all the resources all the time and the security and stuff, we would be able to protect ourselves from going through the next thing that he wants to do. And I think getting to, and it's not that God doesn't want to prosper people financially. I do believe that. I believe, I mean, Proverbs is very clear, like a righteous man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That takes, and it wasn't just talking about like the inheritance of your good name. It meant finances and property and assets. And I mean, you look at the example of Abraham and Moses, all these guys, they did accumulate stuff, but they also kept walking in faith at all times with the knowledge that like whether it came or went, God would take care of them. And so it's fascinating to me that a lot of us who say yes to the Lord, who go after him, go through seasons that seem so much harder than the other people. Like, I mean, and I'm not naming names here, but I know people like who chose what you would call the quote unquote easy life. They did not want to do anything scary. And so they're staying in jobs they hate, but they're like, you know what, I'm only going to do it for 20 years. They just want to get to that retirement place. And then there's times when I look at them and it's like, oh, they have money to go out to dinner tonight, or they have money to do this for their wife or their kids. And like, that seems really appealing in the moment. And it's so easy to forget that they buy, like, it's not that there's anything wrong with them. I'm not saying that. It's just that there's a different choice you make in life. And we chose a radical path, and it's scary a lot of the times, and you're hanging on by a thread a lot of the times. But like you said, God always comes through.
Right.
And that's the thing where I'm dealing with right now. And in like the hard times, the hard days I have, it's not because I'm hungry. It's not because these catastrophic things are happening to me.
Right.
It's because I'm starting to live in the future where Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's enough trouble on its own. But I'm starting to live in tomorrow. My, like you said, rushing to get to the discouragement, rushing to get to the disappointment. It's like I'm already living in that place, and it totally ruins my day to day.
Right.
And that sucks and then it's like, but today I'm fine. I might 3 days from now, rent's due, and it's like, oh, I don't have enough to pay rent. Like, I mean, you and I probably lived this at Bethel and knew a lot of people live this all the time.
Yeah, that was always
they didn't have Bethel, but man, all these guys always were taken care of. They all got through school. I mean, we received checks in the mail, the craziest stuff, and we learned a lot through it too. I mean, I learned how to get the miraculous thing from God with only asking him, and I learned how to get the provision by being vulnerable in community. I learned both. And it's and we're not even as poor right now as we were then. And yet it's the feelings still feel the same. Isn't that funny how that happens?
Yeah.
So that's, but yeah, man, everything you said was so spot on. I love where you were going with that.
It's one of those things where and again, it's not designed or set up to be a lesson. It does produce fruit, right? Pressure and, the death of a seed.
God does prune, but that's different than a lesson.
Yeah, no, that's not. Yeah, I mean, and things can be pruned from, unbelief can be pruned. There's things that can absolutely be pruned. And I won't even pretend to understand some because it falls into so many categories a lot of the time. Sometimes it's just life, right? Sometimes it's just what it is. It happens, The fender bender was not a divine thing that you guys experienced, like wasn't in North Carolina or something like that. That wasn't, the Lord going, oh, man, Paul is really, the things that he's going to take away from this, how powerful. That's not it. That's baloney. Sometimes it's just some goofball just rear ends you, and that's what it is. And if God wants to make something beautiful out of that crazy mess, that's awesome too. But I think that's one of the things that we can, be excited about, is recognizing that he is redemptive, and he is the master of taking what the enemy intended for evil and turning it for good. So if it is a situation where it's something squirrely, gets in the way, or life just gets in the way, or the enemy gets in the way, or somebody being used by the enemy gets in the way, God has this amazing capacity to redeem that. And he may not redeem it exactly in the time that we want. I've found that my watch and God's watch are not the same. Shocking enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have this moment. Interesting story. When I went to Bethel, I was calculating third year and how I was going to figure out third year, and so we had people who were supporting us. Super great. So grateful for all the people that supported us the time we were there. And Stace and I would come home, and we'd sell hot dogs at the church, and I had written a book, and people had bought copies of the book. By the way, the book is available at New Royals Awakening. You can do that. You can buy swag. You can buy the book. You can New Royals Awakening. Go ahead. Support New Royals and where we're going. Thank you for that. But so we did that, but it didn't raise tons of money, but it was fun, and it got us through the summer, before we headed back to class. And so I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refinance my car. So, which I was in mortgages before I came to Bethel, so I understood the stupidity of refinancing if you didn't need to. I understood that you're basically taking debt, and hey, you're lowering your payment right now, but you're stretching that payment over a longer term and thus paying more for your car. And I realized that I only had we had an Infinity QX56 that we had taken a loan out on, before we left for Bethel, when we were doing real estate and all this stuff. And so we'd paid it down pretty significantly before we left for Bethel. So my payments were not too bad, but a couple $100, $250 or something like that, back in the day. And so I realized if I could refinance it, because I think I only had like three more years on it, but we were tight, and if I could refinance it into a 5 or a 7, I could get that to around $100, and it would save us about $120 for the year, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And that's what it worked out to, about $115, $120 for the year.
Yeah.
And so if I could do that, that'd be great, because that's almost like $1,300, that would save off of our annual budget. So like, here we go. This is great. So I'm like, babe, we can do this. I've got a plan. Here we go. This is what we're going to do. She's like, all right, whatever. That's what you feel. And, and so I had kind of taken the journey into my hands at that point. Right. Instead of, because the clock was ticking. It was like 2 weeks until we left back to Reading, and I hadn't solved this problem yet, and I wanted to have it solved before I get there, because I didn't want to be one of those guys at RG, where it was like, I gotta pay this one. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to ever be that guy. I was always giving to those guys, so I was like, I don't want to be one. So I kind of took it into my hands, and so a friend of mine, we went to the bank and got approved for the loan, or got approved for the refinance. Did the refinance. Went in, signed the final papers, got my new payment, yada, yada, yada. Perfect. So what sucks, right, is I got my payment down, but now I have stretched it now into like a 5 or 6 year loan when I only had 3 years left. So yes, I'm saving $1,300, but I'm paying an extra, $3,000 over the life of the loan now, or something like that. So it's costing me money, technically, not right away, but in the long term, it's costing me money. So I kind of I hated that because I knew better, but I had like, okay, but I solved the problem, right? I solved the problem. So I signed the papers, and I get into the parking lot of the bank. Paul, I am in the parking lot. The ink is still wet on the contract. And a friend of mine calls me, and they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" I was like, "I'm good." And they said, hey, when do you guys leave? I said, we leave in a couple weeks, like 8-10 days. I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, oh, that's good. Okay, well, we're really excited for you guys. I'm like, thanks, that's awesome. Yeah, I just felt like we're supposed to bless you with $1,500.
I love it. Oh man, that's so funny.
And
That's amazing.
I'm sitting there in the car, and I've just got the dumbest look on my face, and I'm sitting with my friend. I think it was my nephew or something, and I'm sitting over and I look at him, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I probably what I should have done is won in and asked if I could tear up that contract. I didn't even think about that.
Right. Yeah. Stop it now. You haven't processed that.
I'm just sitting there. Well, probably because I was just so embarrassed. I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" And literally, I could hear the Lord be like, I told you. I mean, I told you I had you. Like, what's the problem here?
I know.
And so,
oh my gosh,
but I learned a lot in that he's got purpose, he's got plan, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily align with our timing. I'm trying to get the same brand wristwatch as my father, but I just can't seem to find the right store. But he is good. He is faithful, and the littlest thing, and so he's not afraid to take an opportunity and go, all right, Sean, go ahead. You go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
And as soon as you're all done, I'll show you what I was going to do. So and he's not taking me to the woodshed for that. He's just like, hey, maybe next time,
he laughs about it,
right? Like,
because he knows you'll be fine ultimately. Yeah,
right.
No, man, that's so good. I was thinking just the other day about how every single time we've been in a season like this, and it seems like time's running out. It's like God has always brought what we needed right at the last moment. And it's not, and I want to say it's not always the last moment, but a lot of times it is. Sometimes you get a little early, and that's always really fun. But a lot of times it's the last moment. And I can think of how so many times in my life I was going through a transition with a job, and I really needed a job and couldn't get one for whatever reason. And all of a sudden, like right when we needed it the most, I got the job that was the best fit for me and the best, better pay than the other job. And that's happened multiple times for me. And then there's one time where it didn't happen. I didn't understand. It's when I moved from Redding after Bethel to Texas, and I didn't understand. I didn't want to move to Texas, but it was the only open door. So we took it, and I kind of came kicking and screaming, but there was a job promised at the end of it. So we moved, and I went through all the process of getting the job, met with 3 managers at this company. They all loved me. It was kind of supposed to be a done deal. And then the day when they were meeting with the owner, and I was basically waiting for a phone call that was like, can't wait to have you start. I got a phone call that was like, Paul, we're so sorry. We don't know what happened, but they want to go another direction. And like, they were stunned talking to me, and I was just crestfallen. I was like, I moved to Texas. What is happening? Well, the job I ended up getting a couple weeks later, I went to a job fair in this small town we'd moved to, and I ended up getting basically hired on the spot to be a bartender at a club, at a golf club. And it's just like, man, this sucks. This is not what I moved here for, anything. And so it was really stressful and really hard. And I went through a few months of like, what the heck, God? But this, for the time being, it took care of us, and the hours were flexible, but I hated it. I did not want to be there. I was so angry at God. Well, looking back now, knowing what I know now, that company that I was going to be hired at, that I wanted a job at, they went through a major issue of restructuring and lost a lot of good people over the next 6 months. And basically, anybody I know, and I have friends who worked there during that time, said that working at that company over the next year was hell. It was awful. Most of them left. The ones that stayed on It was awful. And if I'd been there during that time, I would have gone through all of that. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have made it through it. And then I would have been maybe even a worse place. And so that was an example of God like providing for me in a way that was totally unexpected, but he was actually preserving me and protecting me from something. And so it still took me a couple years to kind of like really start to understand why he brought me to this town in Texas. But the point is that he provided for me through it, and he set us up, and we started getting involved in the community, and it was great. And we made some of our best friends ever there, and we're not there anymore, but we were there for 6 years. But that's how it started.
Right.
It started in this crazy way. And then, what's funny is the second to last job I had before I left there was at that company for one of those positions. And the owner got to basically tell me like they were mistaken for never hiring me. I spent 3 months there, did great before I moved on to another job. But it was kind of like this healing process on the way out.
Right.
Of being accepted by the place that rejected me. And
wow.
Even that job, I'd left that job because God, I was working at a church before that. And out of nowhere, and Sean, you probably understand this, and some of you out there probably do too, but sometimes it doesn't make sense at all on the surface, but then your heart just shifts. And you gotta just listen to that, because everything else feels dead if you don't. And my heart shifted, and I knew I had to leave the church, and I knew I had to do something else. And I was doing great at the church. I loved working there. I got along great with my boss, who was a head pastor, and we were growing this church. Awesome. Except the pay, but that's okay. We still loved being there. And, but we just knew, like, all of a sudden the shift happened, and I knew, and I processed it for months as I so struggled whether or not I was supposed to leave. So we left. Summer and I, we had all these big ideas of hopes for what was going to come, and we left, and then nothing for a month, and we were like running out of money, everything. And then the one job that hired me was the job that rejected me when I first come to Kerrville, right?
Wow.
And it was just, the timing was perfect. So, but I have a lot of stories like that where God comes in right at the last moment, right when it's least expected, or right when it's easy to give up hope, right when I'm thinking, holy cow, I made the wrong choice, right?
Right.
I stepped out on faith, even though I'd spent months processing this. Even leaving Bethel, spent months processing that I don't think I'm supposed to do third year. These are hard decisions, because that would have been the easy choice, because everybody was doing it. And I could have made these easy choices and just stuck doing what I was doing. But I knew in my heart I needed to leave. And then it was hard. But now looking back, I'm like, every one of those choices was the right one. But man, it's really hard. And I think God really likes to, I think he really likes to let us get our faith build up he doesn't leave us alone. He doesn't pull away from us at all, but he kind of lets us reach a point where we're so dependent on him, we actually start to wonder if he's going to come through, because he loves to prove it to us. And I feel like the stuff I worry about now is not what I used to worry about. I did used to worry about whether we were going to eat or pay rent. I don't worry about that anymore. Now it's the worries have changed, because that's been proven to me, but it wouldn't have been proven to me if I hadn't gone through it. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, hopefully we've, our testimonies are encouraged tonight. I think a practical thing I'm feeling tonight for our New Royals community. This is kind of something directional. I think would be helpful if you find yourself in a position right now, in a place, and a lot of people do. Part of one of the things that I do in my job is I get to talk to business owners, entrepreneurs, and solopreneurs all over the world, actually, and that's one of the things is trying to navigate this new world is challenging. It's challenging for business people, visionaries, ministries, and I get to meet with pastors every week as well, and it's just sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, we're talking about this again, and it's just because there's new dynamics, and
sure.
I took my first COVID test today, ever, not because I have COVID, but because I have to have a negative test to be able to go to my friend's birthday party at a restaurant. That's the new world, you know. And the lady was
Yeah.
like, okay, and what's the patient's name? And I was like, patient? No, I'm just Sean. I'm, you know, I wasn't snarky. I was nice, but I was just like, nope, no patient here. I'm not sick. I'm just Sean. And so my wife and I had to do the little swiggle thing. So, but what I was going to say was, what are the promises that the Lord has given you? And just write those down. Write them down.
Yes.
Let those get into your spirit as you're writing them down. I'm actually going to do it tonight. I'm actually going to do some writing tonight or tomorrow. Just writing some of the testimonies down, things to remember, just to remind yourself of what His goodness is, and you know. And I feel like that's kind of a good place to press as we come up against our end here tonight. But
I love that.
Paul, you got any closing thoughts?
I mean, I want to say exactly what you said. Remember your testimonies too. You know, write down the promises and then write down the breakthroughs from past seasons that are similar to maybe the one you're going through.
Yeah.
And finally, I mean, it's might be cliche or just too easy, but honestly, take a look at some of the heroes of the faith, not just in the Bible. Go through history and just pick out a couple and read about how their up and downs, like how, and think. What I love to do is I love to imagine the in between the lines. You know, we have David all those years in the caves. It doesn't tell us that much when he's running from Saul. How many times did he reach despair or worry? Yeah. I mean, we get some of it in Psalms, but imagine what that was like. Imagine what it was like for Moses in the year between year 40 and year 80, where he's out in the wilderness, exiled from, you know, probably looking over his back to ever see if an Egyptian's wandering out that way. I mean, these men and women, these heroes of the faith, they live through stuff, and we don't get the full story, but it's there if you really think about it, because they were human just like us. For sure. So that always helps me.
That's awesome. Well, hey, everybody, have a great night. We are excited. You know, stay tuned. We'll have an episode of the feed dropping here relatively soon, and then we'll be back with the podcast. But again, check out newroyalsawakening.com. And then we have a final thought here.
I was going to say, you got a feed coming, which is exciting. And I've also recorded the very first prophetic movie review.
Prophetic movie review. So when
it's going to be a new series. I'm going to get that going. I got it mostly recorded, just going through some editing, and obviously I'm going to run it by you to see what you can work on.
Sure, I'll love it.
That should look for that in the next couple of days, guys. The movie I reviewed with a prophetic message is Dune.
Dune. Really good. All right, prophetic movie reviews. All right, hey, we will see you guys next week. God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless, guys. Have a great weekend.